Alright, good afternoon everybody who is watching with us and those who will watch later. Welcome to this end of the year stream. We are again flying Iberia Express and we are flying the Airbus A321 NEO from Toliss on X-Plane 11. We will do two short island hopping flights on the Canary Islands, first flying from La Palma to Fuerteventura and then from Fuerteventura to Tenerife Sur. And to be very festive and end of the year, our call signs will be Iberia Express 2020 and then 2021 to make the switch from the old year to the hopefully better new year. Unfortunately, there is no ATC on the IVAO network above the Canaries, unlike the last time where we were very lucky and there was a lot of controllers we could talk to. So far it's going to be listening only to me, and then we'll make calls on Unicom. Unfortunate a bit. But that's how life is sometimes, especially this year. But to start things up immediately, we are here in La Palma, beautiful island, beautiful airport from Orbex. Again, I really like this airport. To just have a look over how it is. It's on the east side of the island. It's really built along the seashore. It's also a bit like Madeira. The runway really ends above the water, so you really don't want to overrun the end of the runway because there is nothing to go for. And yeah, the approach is also really beautiful. We have done this last week, but this time we are flying somewhere else and only leaving from here. We are inside the cockpit. We'll set up the Airbus from cold and dark. We'll do the complete setup as usual. We are flying from La Palma to Fuerteventura. And strangely, SimBrief has given us a quite low cruising flight level of flight level 130, which might be interesting because we can have a nice look at the other islands, especially Tenerife, as we pass them at a relatively low altitude. For today, I will just immediately set the fuel for the flight. We'll need 5.3 tons for the 200 passengers. I've already loaded the 200 passengers. Then we need 5.3 tons of fuel. That should be plenty enough, and we are still quite light, so we will have no issues taking off with a relatively short runway of La Palma. Just to be a bit different than usual, I will change the distribution of passengers, that more people are sitting at the back. That only influences the trim setting for takeoff, but then at least we have something different, and also the center of gravity is at a different point. Of course, that's why you need a different trim setting. Alright, so we apply these load settings, fueling settings, and then we do our setup. So the cockpit preparation starts with looking at the master switch. The engine master switches are in off position. The engine mode selectors are normal. The landing gear is down. And then we check the battery voltages. They are above the 25.5 limit. So then we turn battery 1 and then battery 2 on. And since there is external power available, we turn the external power on too. It's daylight, so we put the dome lights on bright. We set the parking brake pressure is good. And then we turn on the cockpit lights for all the displays while they are doing their self-tests. And then I will also answer the questions as soon as I have set these brightnesses. Where are we? The central displays. And then also the displays for my missing first officer. Of course, much more difficult to fly an Airbus when you're only alone, as then when you have a first officer. The flap positions are matching what's on the display, 0, 0, they are all in. The speed brake lever is retracted, and then the probe and the window heat is on auto, it's here. Air condition panel has all the lights off, correct. Crossbeam is set to auto, the annunciator lights tested, everything seems to be lighting up, that's good. We turn the cruise oxygen supply on, the temperature control is as desired, as good as it is. On the electric panel only the 2 fault lights should be on, that's checked. And on the ventilation panel all lights are off, also checked. Then we can turn on the ADIRs one by one, always waiting for the on battery line to disappear after we have turned them on the nav button to start the alignment. And also for the last one, on bat disappears, then we turn on strobe lights to auto, navigation logo lights to 2 today, seatbelt signs go on, no smoking signs go to auto, and the emergency exit lights are armed. Landing elevation is set to auto, so you cannot turn the dial more to the left, that's the auto position. Then the pack flow can be left as it is, because with 200 passengers we use the normal flow. And all the fuel pumps can be switched on. And then before I go to the questions, we will do properly these, and sorry, not these, but this one, not this one, this one, yes. The fire tests, the engine 1, the APU, and engine 2. All fire tests are fine and passed. And then we still turn the radio panels on, which are officially called the radio management panels. And then we are more or less ready to setting up our flight plan and so. But before doing that, I set up here everything for myself. And for the flight plan page. So the questions were from Paul. Hi Paul, if we are flying the LR or the XLR version of the A321 NEO. No, we are just flying the normal A321. So there is no special versions for here. The only difference is that we are flying with the NEO engines. And Hank is asking if we can see with the Toliss how much runway you need. And not per se, because there is not such a takeoff calculator. But for example, when you fill in the departure airport, and we will see it, then here in the ISCS, the Toliss Interactive Simulation Control System, you can see if that's enough or not. I will come back to this when we have already our departure runway set, and then I will show what I mean. So basically you can check it, but you cannot see the exact runway length necessary for a departure. But it works a bit the other way around, so I will come back to this. And then it's going to be more clear. So for the FMGS initialization, we first in the data page, we check our GPS position, because we want to make sure that when we set in our departure, that matches more or less. That means that we have not selected an incorrect airport. That's a kind of a safety check. So we are flying from La Palma, which is Golf Charlie Lima Alpha. I remember Golf Charlie Lima Alpha, to Fuerteventura, which is Golf Charlie Foxtrot and Victor. Golf Charlie Foxtrot Victor, yes, that's correct. Our alternate route is to Gran Canaria, which is Golf Charlie Lima Papa, Golf Charlie Lima Papa. And today we are Iberia Express, the low-cost airline of Iberia, Iberia Express 2020-2020. The year we are saying goodbye to. And then our position 28.37.3, 28.37.3, so that's good. And then 17453, 17453, that's good. Cost index for today's flight by SimBrief is 26, and our flight level is the unusually low 130. Okay, and we can align the IRS. Then we align the IRS, yes. Then we can do our flight plan. And what we are doing is a departure from runway 36. That's the most common departure from La Palma, because on the island the winds are usually from the east or the northeast, and today is a normal day. And our departure route is our SID is the Tenerife 4 Tango. The Tenerife 4 Tango departure, there is no transition, insert and fly. And then from the Tenerife Norte VOR, we are taking an airway, and the airway is the Hotel 274, and we are taking that airway to Golf Delta Victor. Golf Delta Victor. And that's it. That's a very easy flight plan, because from there it's already our arrival to Fuerteventura. And then it's useful to put up the map of Fuerteventura, the charts for Fuerteventura, because then we can see the vias if we need them for the arrival. So our arrival is going to be the GDV 5 Sierra. I can already come in here. The arrival is going to be the ILS. Oh, we have to check it. So our arrival is the GDV 5 Sierra, which takes us to the Sirpu point. And then we see our approaches. We'll do an ILS approach. ILS Zulu is the most common, and that can come from Sirpu. Correct, good. So then we say the ILS 1 Zulu via the GDV 5 Sierra and via Sirpu. And then we apply and insert, and then we can skip through here on the plan and see if this is more or less correct, and this looks more or less correct. As we are coming from Sirpu up to this waypoint and then align with the ILS. And we might fly that manually, this last short arch, we'll see. So this is all correct. And then just to be completely complete today, we'll also enter the details for the deviation, if that would be necessary. And here you can see the deviation route, which is then a departure from runway 1 of Fuerteventura via the Lorpo for Quebec, Lorpo for Quebec, Lorpo for Quebec. There is no transition, and goes to the Lorpo waypoint, from where there is an immediate arrival to the 03 right of Gran Canaria, which is probably gonna be 03 right. There is only a localizer approach for the 03 right, or a VOR. Let's do VOR. We'll probably not fly this, but... And then the Lorpo 1 kilo arrival. Lorpo 1 kilo arrival. Now we have to check what via that could be. So we go to Gran Canaria. And then we first check the arrivals, which is the Lorpo, what was it, Lorpo 1 kilo. Lorpo 1 kilo arrival, which takes us to L'Alto. There is a via L'Alto, so then we choose that and then it's done. No, that's not correct. It should be 03. What did I do? Let's check it once more. What did we choose? We chose the wrong runway. Okay. The VOR, and there is no VOR for the right. Then we do the localizer Zulu to 03 left. Not 03, we need 03 right. There is no arrivals to 03 right. Then SimBrief has been not kind to us, and we have to do 03 left. But then we can do the ILS Zulu 03 left. And then the arrival is still the Lorpo 1 kilo. Yes. And then via L'Alto and insert, and now it looks much better. Okay, now it looks as it should on the chart. Good. And in the meantime, also our GPS primary is available. That means the IRS has aligned. We put this down for the first officer on the flight plan page. And then we can do the init B page, where we put in our weights. And I can put this down, already set to arc for the departure, and zoom in. And also put the constraints on, where we can see the speed and altitude constraints. And then we go back to our chart, our briefing for a second. And now we can put in our weights. So our zero fuel weight is 69.6 tons, 69 0.6 tons, and our center of gravity is at 31%. 31.0%. Our block fuel is 5.3 tons, and then we have an extra time of half hour basically after our alternate arrival. And Paul is asking what you do to have the matter when searching an airport. But normally when I'm already in the sim, I just use Avitab, and then you can go to airports, can go search, and then if then you go for an airport, then on the main page of the airport here on the bottom, you get the matter from your simulator. And that's always useful to have it from the simulator, because then you're sure that you're going to be flying on the right altitudes in your simulator, because sometimes the real life from the simulator can be 1 or 2 pascals, hectopascals different. It's always safest to take it from the simulator in this case. Okay. Now there is still something else we need to do. So in the flight plan, we can give in the winds. There is winds for the climb, and then cruise wind for Tenerife, which we can again take from our briefing. The winds are on the detailed page after the waypoints. So at Tenerife, the wind is 322 degrees, 322 degrees, and 17 knots, 17 knots. And then when we are in the air, we'll also do it for the arrival. We don't have to do it now. And then you can do another fuel prediction check. You still see there is 30 minutes left, and we do this fuel prediction check afterwards to make sure that all the winds we have entered are already taken into account for this stage. And Paul is asking that you just have to click refresh button on the top right. Yes, that's true, because sometimes it's not taking the latest weather from your sim, so making sure that it takes the latest weather, you can do it by clicking the refresh button when you are at the airport page. So when you click that, you make sure that the weather is the latest live weather. Okay. Now the last thing we have to do is the performance, and that's when we come back to the question from Hank, how you can be sure that with a given performance setting you can take off from the airport. Now the simulator, Toliss itself knows that you are taking off from runway 36 on La Palma. So if you select, for example, the normal config 1 flap setting, then it calculates those parameters that will make sure you can take off. If the runway would be too short, then here there wouldn't be values, but it would say not possible or something like that. I have seen that. And then you can, for example, try a different configuration, because you can see that if you go for more flaps, then you can take off with lower speed. But of course, if you have more flaps, then your initial climb angle is going to be less steep. So for example, if you have to get out of a very deep valley, so for example Innsbruck, you shouldn't be taking off with flaps 3 maybe, because then you cannot climb as fast. So you can take off earlier, but you cannot climb as fast. So that's why the normal flap settings are flap 1, because okay, you take off a bit later, but usually the runways are way long enough to take off, so that's not a problem. But with a smaller flap setting, you can climb faster, and the faster you climb, of course, the safer you are, because the higher you are, if something happens, the more time you have to answer the problems. And for the fun, we'll use toga thrust, which means there is no thrust limit. We'll just take full thrust, and that's because I want to hear the engines roar, and because it's a simulator and we don't have to bother with saving the life of the engines to make them be useful for longer. It's not an issue here, so we can do toga for once. And then the trim setting is down 0.8 degrees, and then you don't enter a flex to temperature, so there is no flex. That means we are doing toga. Okay, so the setup here is complete. Let's see. We are not entering the secondary flight plan, because there is no reason why we do that. They typically do that if there is multiple runways available for takeoff, and you maybe don't maybe you might expect a last minute runway change, and then you can just copy your primary flight plan to the secondary and set up with a different departure runway, and then it's easy to switch if ATC asks you to do so. We have filled the performance page, and then what we need is the local pressure still, because we don't have La Palma here. So La Palma has now 1020. 1020 is set, and the Terran radar goes on, and we can make it a bit darker to not mess so much with our plan. And also, just to see the airport, we put in here the map for the airport. Not that you could get lost here because it's a very small airport, but just that you see how things are and where we are. And then also we can put on our departure, which was the Tenerife Norte Fort Tango, if I remember correctly. Yes, I think so. But let's just quickly check. Tenerife Norte Fort Tango. Tenerife Norte Fort Tango, yes. Okay. So now we are in the stage that we set the scales to arch and 10 miles. And the flight directors are on. The speed and heading window is dashed, so it's in managed mode. We set our initial climb altitude. Since there is no ATC, I'm going to set our final climb altitude, so the cruise altitude is flight 130. We have our standard transponder code of 2000 already in, because there is no ATC. Then we find 2000, you turn it on the system, and we put it to above, that we can see more planes above us in a larger range than the TCAS is active. And then the MCDU displays are set to performance, takeoff and flight plan as required. Okay, we can start the APU. Then you first set the master switch on, and then after a few seconds you can press start. If you do it too fast, it's not going to start. Then here we can monitor the APU start. And then Heavy Driver High is asking if the Toliss A321 plus the NEO package is worth the steep price. I think it's a very nice package. I think it's fine if you also just want to start with the A321 and then see how it's playing for you. I really like flying these planes. I fly most with the Toliss Airbuses. I had first the A319 and I was very happy with it. And then I think a half year later, or maybe even more than a half year later, I thought I would like to have the A321 too. And then again months later, when the NEO package came out, I also felt like I would be happy to experience that too. So it depends. If you have the budget for it, I think it's a very nice package. But if you just want to buy one package to start with, one Airbus, then maybe just buy the A321 base package, and then you can see how you like it. And if you like it a month later, or when you have a bit more money to buy the add-on, you can buy the NEO package. But I'm happy with it, so I can only recommend it. Okay, so the APU is available. You can see it here. And then when the APU is available, then we can check if the APU generator is on. You don't see it lit, so it's on. That's good. And then you can set the external power off. Then we are on APU power, and you set the APU bleed on. Okay, then we can start our preparation for the pushback. And for that, we will plan our pushback route, and we'll have to push back facing south, because we have to first taxi south on the runway and then make a 180-degree turn before we can take off. So this is going to be our planned pushback.
Ground to Cockpit, plan and knowledge. Coming through the menu when you are ready.
And I see that there is in the meantime somebody else who is also flying from La Palma with the Sky team of Air France. So now we will use Unicom to announce that we are going to start pushing back. But I can already call the pushback track.
Ground to Cockpit, Tau is driving up.
Okay, so since there is no ATC, we just have to say what we are doing. Golf Charlie Lima Alpha traffic, IFR A321 NEO. We are pushing back, and then we can already in the meantime set our departure runway is going to be 36, and our seat is going to be the Tenerife Norte Fort Tango, and our climb is going to be to 13,000 feet. and that's gonna be useful for the future when we have to make other calls. And indeed, before the pushback truck is connecting, we should disconnect the
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed. Ready to connect.
the gate is disconnected. Okay, the pushback truck is connecting. Oh, and the other person is disconnected. Such a shame. Anyway, for the next step, we have to turn on our beacon lights because that tells everybody that we are about to start our engines. And all doors are closed. We have seen that all doors are green and the slides are armed. Then we have called the pushback truck, and then when the pushback starts, we start the elapsed timer.
Now connected and bypass being inserted. Release parking brake.
Okay, so we release the parking brakes, and then we start the block
Starting
timer.
pushback, and you may start engines.
Okay, then we can start the engines. So the ignition goes to start, and we stay starting engine number 2, and then engine number 2 is starting. You can have a look also to the right, so it starts spooling up. Okay, N2 is rising around 25%, N2, the EGT and the N1 is also rising. Exhaust gas temperature, and then the N1 is rising too. Nice. So this seems to be a good start. N1 is going to be stabilizing around 20%, 19.5%. And when we see that engine 2 is available, we can also start engine 1. And already now, since there is no ATC, I will put the sound of the engine a bit higher, so we can enjoy the engine sounds during takeoff. Okay, so engine 2 is available, then we can start engine number 1. And that starts spooling up too. N2 is rising. Exhaust gas temperature will start rising soon again, nice, and then soon the N1 will start rising too. Slowly rising. Good, this starts
Operation complete.
Too.
Set parking brake.
We set the parking brakes.
Disconnecting tow, standby.
And monitoring the engines. Alright, N1, so the engine number 1 is also available, both engines are available. Then we set the mode selector to normal. We set the APU bleed off. We say disconnecting for the pushback, APU bleed goes off. Ground spoilers can be armed. We lock the cabin, we reset the rudder trim, we set the required where is this flight controls? We set the required trim.
Tow is disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the left. We'll see you next time and have a safe flight.
Alright, adios. We set down 0.8 degree here. You can see here the pitch trim setting, so we go to 0.8. Okay, 0.8 is set. Good. And there is a hand signal on our left, so we'll wait for that. Normally the guy shows us the pin that's removed from the toe, the front wheel. That's what he's showing us. We also give the thumbs up. And then we come back to our flow, which was broken rudder trim flaps is going to flap 1. Okay, that's our takeoff setting. Pitch trim is already set. We don't need engine or wing anti-ice because it's 20 degrees Celsius, and that's fine. And then at the last step, the APU master can also go off, and all doors and everything is armed, so we can taxi. I forgot to say we were pushing back, but okay. So we'll taxi to runway 36. There is still no ATC unfortunately online, and I see that somebody is about to land on bye-bye. So we will hold short in any case. Do we see somebody coming? Yes, there is an aircraft coming there. Okay, then we will just hold short, but we can already start taxiing in any case. So the parking brake goes off, taxi lights on, and the runway turn of lights on, taxi lights goes to taxi. We start rolling, then we make a brake check, brakes are available, and then we just slightly roll to the right to hold at alpha to wait for the landing aircraft. And then we will have to backtrack after he has landed, or they have landed. So we'll stop here for a second, parking brakes go on, and we are holding. And let's have a look from outside. Okay, they may have made a quite long landing given how small that airplane is. So normally they will backtrack and then exit the runway, so we'll backtrack also and line up and wait while they exit the runway. I think that's fine. There is no other traffic. But then maybe we'll say that. But then we have to say that manually. La Palma traffic A321, but the NEO is the A21 November, so that's the ICAO sign for the A321 NEO. That's backtracking and lining up, backtracking and lining up runway 36. Okay. Then before we enter the runway, we turn our transponder on, we put the landing lights on and the nose wheel lights to take off, as the strobe lights go on, and then we can backtrack. Just a quick check on my checklist. While we turn, parking brakes off, and then we will still have to perform some checks while we backtrack, because a flight control check is still necessary. Normally would do that during taxiing earlier, but here we had like 20 meters to taxi from the pushback to entering the runway. There was not much time. Okay, slowly lining up, first backtracking. And also here the ecam is still telling us some items that need to be done before we can take off. So auto brake needs to go to maximum. The cabin, we tell the cabin that we are about to take off, and then we check the takeoff config and everything is green, so everything is climb and nav are armed. And then brake temperatures are normally fine at this point because we have not used any brakes so far basically today. The lights are on, transponder is on. Then the last thing to do is line up with the runway. Make a full 180-degree turn. Not too fast. Around 10 knots is good. And then let's make our turn. Use as much of the runway as possible. Okay, that's lined up. We apply the brakes. And then let's first on Unicom say that we are lining up and taking off runway 36 Tenerife Norte 4 Tango departure. That's sent, so they know what we are doing. One more check on the lights, everything is good, flaps, speed brakes armed. We are good to go. Takeoff config all green. Then first we set the thrust to 50%. We wait for that to stabilize. Okay, 50% stable. We go release the brakes. Toga, SRS, and auto throttle is armed. For the first part, we apply some yoke pressure until 80 knots is reached. 80 knots, we slowly release the front pressure on the yoke. 100 knots, 120 knots. V1 and rotate. Slowly rotate. Positive rate. So gears go up. 400 autopilot is on. The nose wheel lights can go off. The spoilers disarmed, and we have not started the chrono. Now I've started that. Okay, gear is up. And then now it says that we should go to climb setting with the throttle. So we are back to throttle climb, and then a quick look. Alright, following our departure route properly so far, and enter the cloud layer. Now when our speed reaches the S speed, then we can remove the flaps and clean up nicely. Clearly the initial, till the intercept, we are limited to 210 knots, that's why we are not speeding further. And now we will, indeed you can see, if speed is passed, we clean up the flaps. You can still see them. Yeah. All the flaps are in. And we are speeding up to 250 knots. That's typical speed below. Though we don't need anti-ice, but because it was 20 degrees on the ground, so it's still 9 degrees outside. We have crossed a low cloud layer, so then there is no chance of ice, luckily. So normally when it's 10 degrees or less on the ground, that's when they apply anti-ice. Or of course if it's a higher cloud layer, but this cloud layer was very low, so no problem there. Okay, we have crossed the transition altitude, so we set standard pressure, and we will reach our cruise altitude very, very fast like this. And Loritz is also asking if anybody of you is playing X-Plane 10. I've never played with X-Plane 10. Before I've played X-Plane 11 starting previous summer. The last flight simulator I've played was Flight Simulator 2004. So I had a quite long hiatus with the flight simulators, and only restarted last year after like an 11-year break. So that was a long pause, but no, the first X-Plane I've played was X-Plane 11. Okay, we are soon going to climb beyond flight level 100. And when that happens, then we can turn off our landing lights and tell people that they are free to walk around in the cabin. Okay, flight level 100, then the landing lights go off and the seatbelt signs are also off. Okay, so normally we are set for our cruise, and hopefully there's gonna be some nice view to the right, because our cruise altitude is pretty low today, so normally we'll have nice views to Tenerife especially, which is coming up there in the distance. And that island is La Gomera. This is a bit further, so we don't have such a good view into it. I've I've lowered the engine volume again, so you can also hear me well. I don't know how the sound was so far, but I hope it's quite okay. And now we can clean up. Well, you can see that we are flying to the Tenerife Norte VOR. That's our standard departure after some initial tricky business. So normally for the departure we have not made a briefing, but you follow the runway heading till you reach 600 feet altitude, then you turn to the heading of 95 degrees, and then you intercept from the DME. It's a DME, it's not a VOR, but you basically intercept a radial of 56 degrees until you reach Vanur, and then you start flying to the VOR of Tenerife Norte. So I'm just going to close it. There is no restrictions here, only that at Tenerife Norte you have to be above flight level 110, and that's going to be fulfilled because we are cruising at flight level 130. So that's all good for us. I can close all the La Palma related charts, and I will also close the Gran Canaria related charts because I assume we'll not have to deviate. So we can basically, as we have reached our cruise altitude and everything looks fine, everything does look fine. We put this to the auto setting, and we have 150 nautical miles till our top of descent. You can have a quick look to the right if you see something nice. So that's the island of La Gomera. It's one of the islands I've never been to in real life. I've been to La Palma, I've been to Tenerife, and I've been to Gran Canaria. Though on Gran Canaria I've only been to the airport, and I have not been to the other islands in real life. And of course all these trips have been as a passenger and not as a pilot, unfortunately, but who knows what the future brings, of course. But normally we should have some nice views to Tenerife Norte in a short while. Okay, but we can brief our approach to Fuerteventura in the meantime. And we still need an approach, an arrival chart, an approach chart, and then we still need to prepare our airport charts. And there is an airport chart, and then maybe a taxi chart, which is the parking stand chart. Okay, good. And this back to the main page so I can check the weather when we have to set up that in the night computer, in the MCDU. So our arrival is well, pretty straightforward. Basically from the Tenerife Norte VOR we'll fly directly to the Gran Canaria VOR, which is the Golf Delta Victor, and then from that VOR we'll do the Cockpit tree. I have to check what our arrival is. Our arrival is the Gran Canaria 5 Sierra. So the Gran Canaria 5 Sierra arrival, which is here, the Golf Delta Victor 5 Sierra. So that's just following the 91 degree radial outside from the VOR to Cockpit, and then further to Sirpu, which is the initial approach fix or a potential hold for our approach. And there is a speed limitation of 220 knots, 220 knots at this waypoint. And then from Sirpu we will switch to our approach chart. So here is Sirpu and the potential hold, so that's the same. We fly inwards to the Fuerteventura VOR at the 223 radial, so we'll fly 223 plus 180, that's 303, 303, no, 003, oh sorry, 023 degrees. Oh, Jesus Christ, why is this so difficult? 043 degrees radial inwards, and then at 14 nautical miles from the VOR we'll turn right and intercept, basically fly along the 12-mile arc. So basically this is, if you draw a 12-mile radius circle around the VOR, that's what you have to follow until this point, and then you can line up with the center, basically with the direction of the runway, and then intercept your glide slope and then start the ILS. Yes, Bas is saying 043, it's on the chart. Indeed, I just have to read things and not try to calculate everything in my head, which is clearly not working out properly. So just stick to the charts. It's always a good solution. Stick to the charts. In the meantime, there is a very nice view to Tenerife Norte, so we'll just move to the first officer's chair and then have a look outside. Tenerife. So actually, the Teide is the highest peak of Spain. even though it's quite far from mainland Spain, but this is the highest peak of Spain. And I've actually been to the top. 10 years ago there was a winter school in Tenerife which I attended, and then on the weekend we have parked our car at the highest parking spot, which is at like 2,200 meters, and then during the night we hiked up. It was full moon, so it was quite bright already, but we had like headlights, and then we had the sunrise from the top, and then we hiked down. So it was a quite long hike, but it was really beautiful. And the whole island is really nice, so it's worth checking it out. And actually I've also worked here in the observatory for a few weeks. So you can see on this ridge there is the observatory of Tenerife. And I've been actually using this telescope. Okay, it's difficult to show, but I've been working there. And also the airport of Tenerife Norte, which is the first airport of Tenerife, historically speaking, is just down there. So there's Tenerife Norte. Maybe at one stream we'll also fly there, but today we'll fly on the second leg to Tenerife Sur, Tenerife South, which is just on the other south side of the mountain. Yeah, Bas is saying that it's also good to do some math while flying. Good to do some math while flying, and that's definitely true, especially when doing the PPL. Then sometimes you have to do some calculations quickly in your in your head. Sorry, but indeed, and actually the trick to doing the 180 difference quickly is to remove 2 and add 2. So if you have 3 numbers, the 3 decimals, you remove 2 and you add 2. So the 2 to 3 becomes 043. That's how you can easily do the 180. And indeed the NEO looks very nice, Bas. It's a nice airplane. So the remove 2 add 2 is a good trick you can always do. So for example the 322, if you want to know what the outward radial would be, that remove 2 add 2, so 3 minus 2 is 1, 2 plus 2 is 4, so that's 142. So that's how you do the 180 difference from the 322. You don't want to bother with more difficult methods. Remove 2, add 2, it's very easy to remember. Also this area, this northeastern area is really nice. There's beautiful mountains there. The whole Tenerife is worth a visit, definitely. Alright, so basically we have debriefed the approach, and then you see there is still quite some time before we intercept the glide slope, so we don't really have to start configuring the airplane or the approach much earlier, because you already are limited to 220 knots on the arrival. We'll quickly check that, by the way. But first we'll enter the destination data, because our flight computer already asks us to do. So when you enter the destination data, then it's nice that you can check the weather here, but you can actually check the weather also in the ISCS. So that also gives the destination METAR, and I find it easier to just here, and then I don't have to open an extra menu. So the QNH is 1019er, the temperature is 21 degrees, nice. It's a nice temperature to say goodbye to the old year, 21 degrees. Luckily that's not the case here, and there is quite some wind. It's 360 degrees, and there is 16 knots of wind, but it's almost exactly in the runway axis, so it shouldn't be a difficulty. And there is still no ATC. And what's the transition altitude typically for 6,000 feet? So we'll give that in for transition flight. It's not the same, but for simulation purposes it's fine. And also the minimums for a class C airplane for the ILS is 292 feet. 292 feet. Okay. and we do a configuration full landing, so we leave everything else as it is. Another thing you can do is to enter the winds for the descent, so then your fuel calculation is more precise. And if you are close enough, you can do this automatically, so the Toliss itself can take the winds from the simulator. And before I talk further, we just look down here, because it's this northeast of the island I was talking about. It's really a nice area. The coast is beautiful, there are small islands. And if we look left, we can still see, I think it's Santa Cruz, so the biggest town in Tenerife, in the capital of Tenerife, and there is still Tenerife Norte. And there is a very long road here which goes up to the base of the Teide, or the observatory. Okay, but we are busy with setting up our things. So since we are not yet close enough, the automatic wind request cannot go through, but then you can just also go to your sim brief and check out the descent winds. So here it says for the descent, and we are at 130, flight 130, so there is no much point in entering the other winds, so we just enter for flight level 100. The wind is 328 degrees, 17 knots, and this is at flight level 100. And then the flight computer already knows the ground level winds. Now the wind request is also here, so you could just press it. I will press it, and then it fills in the winds from the simulator. And there is no problem that so of course when you do it like this, it also fills in the winds at like 2000 feet, but normally if you take it from the sim brief, then your lowest altitude is flight level 100. But there is no problem, because when you set your performance approach, then you set the surface winds, so the computer knows what to interpolate between. So now we have prepared our approach, our descent, and then you can check your fuel prediction. There is still 34 minutes extra time beyond the deviation to possibly Gran Canaria, so all the fuel is looking good. I can go back to performance, and there is 80 nautical miles still top of descent, so we are still far out. We still do a few things to help us. But first, there was a question from Heavy Driver if I use any simming hardware. Yes, I have some hardware specifically for simming. First of all, I'm flying with a Thrustmaster joystick. It's basically the 1600, or how is it called? The Thrustmaster T16000. Which is basically the same as the new Airbus Thrustmaster stick, just in different colors. I have the Thrustmaster pendular rudders, so that's the quite more expensive rudder, but since I also fly in a real small plane, I really missed the real feeling of the rudder when I had the older Cytec rudder, so I upgraded for that. If you have the budget, it's worth it. Otherwise, the cheaper rudders work perfectly fine. And I have the TQ3 throttle from Virtual Fly, which is also a very precise throttle with 3 bars, with 3 different throttles. Normally a throttle, a propeller, feather, and a mixture. So these are the 3 things I have. Maybe I will put down the details also to the stream next time, so if there are people like you who are asking, know it. I'm very happy with these. I think any kind of hardware which is using magnetic Hall effect based sensors is going to be a good sensor, because then you will not have the noise of the potentiometers. But of course, everything depends on your budget, because yeah, you know, like in all in life, you can get different things for different money, and they can be still fun. So even when I had at the very beginning the most cheap things, I had basically almost the same amount of fun as I have now. And yes, I'm very happy with the setup right now. Yeah. Then in the meantime, we are flying past Gran Canaria, so this is the northwestern shore of Gran Canaria. I've only been to the airport here. I wanted to come here to have a cycling holiday, because I also like road biking, like any Belgian would. And I actually already had once a holiday booked here, which I had to cancel because we had to move apartments unforeseen in the middle of summer. Unforeseen compared to how early I have booked my holidays. So unluckily I couldn't go, but maybe in the future I will still have, because it's also a very nice island for cycling. So I've not only worked on Tenerife and La Palma in the observatories, but I've also biked there with my road bike. They were all excellent places to bike. Okay, one thing I still wanted to do for setting up the approach, so we have entered the destination beta, was to set up some visual helping guides on the displays, which will show how you can do these things. So for example, if you want to fly the arc here manually, and if it's not nicely properly programmed into the nav data, because it happens, for example, in La Palma it's not entered like that, then you can do some manual helping things. And one of these things is basically the fix info page. So I will switch this back to plan, and our zoom is okay. At any place in the plan, so you don't have to go to where you want to do this, but at any point you can click the right, no, not the right button, sorry, the left button, and then you can come here to fix info and then enter some helping guides to your displays. So these are not waypoints, just drawing on the map basically. And then our reference fix can be the Fuerteventura VOR, so that's Foxtrot Tango Victor. And then we want a 12-mile radius circle around this. Then you can see 12 miles, and then you see there is nicely this circle, and that's the circumference we have to follow between the intercept and then this point from which you can turn. It's actually correctly displayed here already, so the plane will do it nicely. You can see there is this intercept. So after this waypoint, the plane knows it needs to intercept this radial, and at this point it's allowed to deviate from the radial, and that point is exactly this point. So that's nicely programmed in. We will not have to do it manually like we would have to do it in La Palma. And then if you also want, for example, the extended center line even further out, should anything happen and you would want to see that, where that is, then you can also do, for example, another fix info now. So you have 4 fix info pages programmed in the Toliss. I think in real life there might be more, I've heard. But then you can go right, and then you are at a 2/4, and then you can enter the runway, the threshold as reference. So that's Golf Charlie Foxtrot Victor, and the runway is 01 or 03? 01. 01, and then the threshold is the reference point. And then you know that the runway, from the airport chart, that the runway is aimed at 186 degrees, then you put that into the radial, and then you have your extended center line. That's how easy it is. And these are quite useful sometimes. Okay, we can go back to the progress page. And here also, if you want, you can enter the threshold, Golf Charlie Foxtrot Victor 01, and then you know how far you are out from the threshold. It's just an extra helping guide for your convenience. So we just turned above the Gran Canaria VOR. We'll have a quick look outside. This is the port of Las Palmas, I think. That's how it's called, the capital of Gran Canaria. And the airport is somewhere there. I think it's under the clouds now. Okay, we put this back to arc, and then we zoom out a bit. And there is our top of descent. One thing I still wanted to check if our speed limit, because you can see there is a speed limit of 220 knots here, is also programmed in. And we can check that easily also in the flight plan. And here you see this is the waypoint. You see there is a 220 speed limit. And then that the plane will not accelerate beyond 220 and basically start decelerating to approach speed, probably on final already, because we have discussed there is quite some time from turning to final to actually starting the descent on the glide slope at 7.4 miles from the threshold. So we can basically start configuring the airplane when we start going down. Maybe bit sooner because the A321 is heavier than the A319, but we are not very heavily loaded. There is no extra cargo, only the 200 passengers and their bags, and 3.8 tons of fuel at this point, which is not very heavy. One thing we can still check is the frequencies. So that's in the RedNav page. The ILS will auto-tune when we are close enough, but we can also do this manually. So we can just enter the code of the ILS, Foxtrot Victor, India Foxtrot Victor here, and then you see India Foxtrot Victor is manually tuned, so that's why these numbers are a bit bigger. So you see this frequency is smaller because it's automatically set here from this manual entry, and when it's automatically tuned, then both numbers will be small. So you see these are frequencies that the airplane is using now. These are all automatically tuned, so both characters are a bit smaller. Here the name of the ILS is a bit larger because we have tuned it manually. So you check that also the course is 6 degrees, that matches what's on the chart. Sometimes there is a 1 degree difference between the chart and the display. That's normal, at least in the sim. And the frequency is correct, so we have set that. And also we can enter the Fuerteventura DME, so the VOR, to see our distance. Since we are already using an ILS DME that also provides distance, it's not per se necessary, but the arc is from the Fuerteventura DME, which is at this point basically is more or less where the threshold is, so there shouldn't be a big difference. But we can tune this also, so we can say that the second frequency should be the Fuerteventura. So the second VOR is the Fuerteventura, then that's tuned 114.1, and then we put back this to performance, and here you can say VOR2, and then you see the VOR2 is here 61 nautical miles, and at that direction, so that white arrow is pointing to the VOR. And already the VOR1 was automatically tuned to that, so the VR1 and 2 displays are aligned in this case. Okay, so we have to start our descent. We will check if there is no ATC. There is still no ATC, unfortunately, and there is also nobody else flying to Fuerteventura, so we don't have to use Auto Unicom today to announce that we'll start our descent. And since there is no ATC, we'll immediately clear ourselves to the altitude of 2,500 feet, because that's where we have to descend. So we will dial this to 2,500 feet, 2,500, and not start yet because we are still a bit further out. Do some last checks on my checklist for before descent. We'll use auto brake low because it's not a very short runway. I think it's quite okay. Distance wise, 3,400 meters, that's plenty of runway. So we don't need any stronger auto brake. And then all the arrival frequencies are checked, the performance is set, fuel prediction is checked. We don't need a secondary flight plan. Flap position is, we will use full flaps. Auto brakes are set to low. We don't need anti-ice because it's still warm and the clouds are low. Okay, so we are ready to descend, and the descent is 7 miles out, so we are in time. We'll start our descent momentarily. We can also tell the cabin that we are about to start our descent. And you can always start your descent earlier. We'll do this. I will zoom in a bit. We'll start our descent, and then you can see soon. And then you also can switch to progress descent and see here that your deviation from the pre-calculated vertical profile, so that's the VDEV, is 1,200 feet and dropping. Dropping because we will catch up with the pre-calculated profile at one point, and that point is going to be there. So where that blue arrow is the point where we'll meet our pre-calculated profile. So we started descending a bit earlier, but we'll meet our profile there. You see that there is a speed limit of 220 here, and this magenta sign is the deceleration point. We'll start slowing down there to meet the 220 knots there, because right now we are way too fast. normally very soon we'll start decelerating, and then probably we go idle with the engines, of course automatically, but we'll see that something will start happening. Okay, this can go, this stays on progress, that's normal. And see now the aimed speed is down to 220. So here this is the aimed speed, you can see the speed starts dropping, and then we are at idle. So here the engine says that we are at idle. So that's how the automatic deceleration goes. And then if you want, you can help. Not per se necessary, because normally if you have entered the winds properly, then it's not necessary. But a bit of speed brakes is always okay to make sure you arrive to the aim speed when you want to. Of course, if it's unnecessary and you do it extra, it will cost you some fuel. But again, we are in the simulator, so we don't really care about that, especially that close to our arrival. And then here we have already entered to the northwestern peninsula of Fuerteventura. There is some sandy beaches here. I've also not been to this island in real life, but all these Canary Islands are a bit different. Some of them are more volcanic, some of them are more sandy. There are some green parts, of course, here and there, but all of them are volcanic in general. Okay, in the meantime, we are almost at 220 knots, and we have just reached that before arriving to the waypoint, so that's okay. Don't forget to clean up your speed brakes when they are not necessary anymore to save fuel. And it's also the 220 knots is basically at our green dot, and the green dot is the lowest clean speed, so the lowest safe clean speed. And since 220 is just below the green dot, we will also set flaps 1, because we don't want to be in clean configuration below the green dot speed. Actually, you can see these speeds here. So the clean speed, that was the green dot, is 222 knots. So at 220 we have to fly with 1 flaps. Flaps 1, sorry. We go back to progress. And we are about to cross flight level 100, so we put landing lights on and seatbelt signs also on. Yeah, Hank, the descent goes very differently compared to the Boeings. Here you just before the top of descent you set the altitude where you want to descend, and then you push the altitude knob, and then the plane will descend on the profile. So there is nothing else. Of course you can do the same kind of descent as you do in a Boeing. You can also set a vertical speed rate or a path where you set at what angle you want to descend, or you can change the profile actually by the not anymore because you're too late, but by changing the cost index. So you see now the cost index is set as 26, which defines what kind of profile we will be descending at and what the speed will be. So the different the cost index is, the different the descent profile is going to be. And of course, these are just the automatically calculated profiles. You can always switch to a selected mode when it's not managed by the computer, and then it's done differently. I've covered that in other streams. Today I will stick to standard procedures with the ILS, I think, to not make it too difficult, and also once in a while I like to fly an ILS too. One word about the scenery. So as on La Palma you could see that I was using the new airport and the ortho scenery and the overlays from Orbix. I actually for all the other, and that scenery in theory covers all the other Canary Islands too. But instead of that, for the other Canary Islands, since I have nice payware airports for all the other islands too, I'm using the Spain UHD or ortho scenery, because all the other developers in the past have designed their airports to be compatible with the mesh of Spain UHD. But the nice thing is, because this is a very nice ortho scenery already from Spain UHD, so what you see here is not the Orbex scenery, but all the overlays. So all the windmills, the house placements and everything, they are from Orbex. And that's something extra special because they are really nicely not really, probably not hand placed, but using a database. But all the buildings are placed where the buildings are in real life. And that's a big step compared to the Spain UHD, which uses basically the standard overlays of X-Plane, where if you have a village, then you have houses along the street everywhere, not just houses where houses are. So this mix of mixing Spain UHD with the Orbix scenery is a very good solution because it makes sure that my sceneries are compatible, my existing airports are compatible, but I'm still getting something extra out of the Orbix scenery itself for the islands outside of La Palma. And on La Palma, of course, I'm using completely Orbix, so also the satellite and the mesh is from Orbix there because that's necessary for the airport of La Palma. But I think it's a very nice package, especially for the price and how much I like flying on the Canaries. It's very good. It's a good compromise. Alright, we are at 6,500 feet already, and we are a bit fast, so we will put out some speed brakes. Probably the wind is not exactly as it was in the initial setting, so that's why sometimes you might have to put out flaps. We are almost about to cross the transition level, so we can switch to the local pressure, which is at 1019er. So we pull this 1019er, so QNH is set. And soon we'll intercept this radial. So very soon we'll make a sharp turn to the right. And here is what you can really see what I talked about the Orbix overlays, that buildings are only where buildings are in real life. So you can see these more central locations around villages and then still some scattered houses here and there. It looks really, really nice. I mean, I love it. And of course, a good thing also about flying on the Canaries, that your frame rates will be always very good, because there is not that much scenery overall. This looks really nice. On the village there in the port, also another village there in the port. You can see the houses are placed properly where the houses actually are. Okay, we don't need speed brakes anymore. And the master caution was because our speed brakes were still out. See, the intercept works perfectly fine. And also you can see that we are on profile because there is a small green dot here just where this yellow bar is, and that green dot is the altitude of our pre-calculated profile. So if we were too low, then the green dot would be above us. If we were too high, then the green dot would be below us. So for now on, we are on the profile perfectly. Then one extra thing we'll have to make sure is that the approach phase, so on the performance page, the approach phase activates before we start our descent on the glide slope. But if that doesn't happen early enough by itself, we'll activate the approach phase on our own and make sure we slow down in time to the speed of what's necessary. But the speed in any case will be handled by the Airbus itself, so that's why we are in managed mode. And you can see, you go to the flight plan page, that here the speed also starts dropping after the intercept. And that intercept is here. So after the intercept, already during the intercept, the speed is supposed to be dropping below 200 knots, and then we will go to the final approach speed. I'm going to put these up here just as a help. And you can also see, so at 7.4, when we are 7.4 miles from the VOR, then we will intercept the ILS. So normally just after the intercept, I will already, so approach phase I think has just activated. So if we go to perf, yes, approach phase is here, approach phase has activated, and then the speed is dropping. Then we can start putting out flaps as we go below these double orange lines, because this double orange line shows which is going to be the maximum speed for the next stage of flaps. So soon at the S speed, when we cross the S speed, I will put out flaps 2. And then you will see that the overspeed will drop down to this position. So now we are at safe speed, flaps, and then the overspeed red marker drops down to exactly where the previous double mark was. Okay, we put the LS scales for the ILS, and then we put approach and autopilot. And then you can see that the localizer is captured and the glide slope is already captured, even though the glide slope is being captured because our last descent to that point was along with the glide slope. Okay, so glide slope is captured, localizer is captured, autopilot 1 and 2 are on, so we could do a Cat 3 landing just by the Toliss, just by the Airbus, but we'll do it ourselves. Okay, so gears go down. Okay, flaps 3, and speed brakes are armed. Runway turn flights on, nose lights to take off, which is for landing 2. We call the cabin that landing is imminent. And then flaps go full.
2000.
And then when we arrive down to our final approach speed, then landing is imminent. The runway is there, we are on profile, 2 red, 2 white. And we can see that there is the typical low-level haze, which is sometimes on the Canaries. And the runway here is very interesting. There's a huge extended, well, how is it called? Stopway, like a very long, 1 kilometer long stopway. So there's going to be asphalt under us for a long time before we can actually touch down. There is nobody else on the Fuerteventura on the network, so I don't have to say we are arriving. There is all these holiday houses and apartment hotels around us. And at like a kilometer I might disconnect and then just do this manually from here on, with the auto throttle still armed, because we are not going to change that. So we are 1000 above. I will disconnect the autopilot and I will also do a raw data ILS approach, so there is no flight directors, we only follow the diamonds. And of course we go visual because we are visual. The diamonds are still there as a guide. The wind is slightly from the right, and quite strong wind actually, 13 knots. So we'll see how this landing goes. And the fact that there is wind from the right means that after landing we have to kick a bit left with the rudder to decrab.
500.
We're getting a bit high, so we are correcting.
400.
The profile is good.
300.
A bit low.
200.
Yeah, we're a bit low.
100. 50. 40. 30. 20. Retard. Retard. 10. 5.
Okay. Reversers. Okay, 80 knots, reverse goes idle, manual braking, and we can exit here to the left. Also slowly braking a bit. Okay, and we are far enough from the holding lines behind us. We can just turn to the left here actually. Then we will do our after landing checks. Okay, we'll stop here and do the after landing flow, so clean up the flaps. Spoilers up, landing lights go off, strobe lights on, nose wheel lights to taxi, and we start the APU, first the APU master, and then we can start the APU, and we can also put the transponder to standby. Then just a quick look at my checklist that we did everything: landing lights off and retreat, nose wheel lights taxi, strobe lights auto, ground spoilers disarmed, engine mode selector is normal, was on normal because we didn't need anti-ice. Terran data is not necessary anymore, flaps are retracted, APU master is on, APU switch is pressed, and then we can monitor our brake temperatures actually. If we need brake fans, so if the brake temperature goes above 300 degrees, then we'll apply brake fans, otherwise we can just taxi to the stand. And then when we are at the stand, I will disconnect for a short while so I can show you guys the replay of the landing. It was quite an okay landing. There was quite some wind on the final, so there was a lot to correct for. We're a bit off the center line, but not horrible. And there is the question if the Airbus with the CRT displays have all these visual aids as well. I think so. I think what's displayed on the display of the LCD and the CRT versions is still the same. It's just a different display, but of course I'm not sure, but that's what I think it is. So here we take Tango 2 to the right immediately. And then we'll take a gate somewhere in front of the Fuerteventura sign. One thing that we actually did not do on the approach is that when we started going down on the ILS, then we didn't tune in the go-around altitude. So that was something we missed from the procedures. But I was sure in any case we wouldn't have to go around, which of course is a very bad excuse. Okay, so we will aim at find a nice gate where there is only one gate to connect to. So let's see, what is there? Maybe gate 18. Looks like a nice gate. We can try that. There is 18A and 18B. I don't like those that much actually. So let's go a bit further. Let's do 20. 20 is a good number, like 2020. Maybe not such a good number, but we'll do 20. So gate 20. Let's hope then the SAM save dock system works well here. Okay. So turn to the right. Okay, I think we are quite well centered, maybe a bit more to the left. Nose wheel lights and runway turn-off lights can go off. Normally there would be maybe a personal there, we don't want to blind them. And then now just nicely, slowly, a bit more. Okay, stop, parking brakes on. Parking brakes on. There is no anti-ice, APU is already available, so APU bleed can go on. And then when the APU bleed is on, then we can turn off the engines. Engine 1 goes off. Engine 2 goes off. And then the gates are connecting. Welcome to Fuerteventura. We'll do a short turnaround and then we'll fly further to Tenerife South. Okay, gate is connected. Good. We can tell the passengers that it's fine to get up and grab your bags and run for your lives as usual. Everybody does. The temperature is a bit high, so we turn on the brake fans. Well, not very high, but we turn on the brake fans. And the nose wheel and the lights are, the nose wheel and the thermometer of lights are off. Vehicle lights can go off because the engine is stopped. And then the elapsed time counter is exactly 1 hour block time, and we had a bit less than 50 minutes flight time. We reset those timers for the next leg. And then we can also turn the fuel pumps off because we will be fueled. And I will also say that we want to connect ground services, so let's have external power and low pressure air available. Then we can go to external power and then we can turn off the APU because we have external power. Or we can just leave the APU on for the turnaround. If it's a short turnaround, maybe they leave it on, I don't know, but we'll leave it on. It makes life easier. Okay. Then while people are deboarding, then we'll just wait here a few more minutes so our flight leg is properly recorded by the tracker software of IVAO, and then I will show the replay. And then after replay I will have to submit a next flight plan, which is already prepared, so it will not take much time, maybe a minute, and then we can go on with the second flight. You can see that the flight computers are already reset, so they are basically clean, in a clean state. One thing which doesn't happen here, I don't know if it happens in the real aircraft, is that the fixes are, I think, not cleared. So if I cannot go to the fix info page yet because there is no destinations in, but you can see that actually the circle that we have drawn here and the radius is still in. So normally I can clean that up in the next stage. I would expect that to happen automatically maybe in the real plane. I don't know, I have no idea, but this is something we have to take care of. So this can go back to the can go back to the menu and FMGC. And that's actually then the data page. That's the aircraft status page. Yes, so that's the aircraft status page. Okay, let's disconnect from the network for a second and then have a look at our landing. Okay, we are disconnected, good. And then let's have a look at our landing. First one from outside. Here is the DME, so basically it's a bit offset from the threshold. Okay, one from inside, from passenger's view. That was quite alright, better than Ryanair, I'm telling you. Right, and let's do one more from the axis of the runway. I will fasten this up to see how much decrabbing we had to do, how much wind there was. You can already see that the airplane is looking into the wind to the right. Could have been softer. Alright, we'll see how the next one goes. But then immediately back to the center line and keep there. Good. That's all good. Okay. So that was 241 feet per minute. Not that it says anything about the goodness of your landing, but it's not a bad value. Okay, Hank is asking in the meantime, how do you set up to see the landing afterwards? Not sure I fully understand the question. With the Toliss you don't have to change anything. You can just jump back in any kind of configuration because the Toliss records the flap settings and everything, so you don't have to do anything about that. You can just go back, jump to the replay, and you will be configured as you were configured in the actual landing. Okay, so while we are sitting here, nice and pretty on Fuerteventura, we'll see if there is ground services available, just for the fun.
Try a bigger airport for service.
There is no ground services available, it's a bit of a pity. But okay, so I'm just going to quickly submit the next flight plan. I've already prepared it on the SimBrief and pre-file on the IVAO network. And then the only thing we have to change is the departure time. I think we can depart in 20 minutes, so let's aim at 16:55. I think 16:55 is definitely doable. That's 17:55. Might go faster, doesn't really matter. And then just one waypoint, that's easy. And we are going to be Iberia Express 2021 this time. So submit flight plan. Flight plan is submitted. Good. And then, so to answer the question of heavy driver also, just a second, I'm going to connect back to the network to make sure that we don't lose our stand here by somebody who would load in here. So Iberia Express 2021, still an A321 and Iberia Express with Sharklets livery, Fuerteventura to Tenerife Sur. Perfect, so this is set and we are loaded. So the question is that the A321 NEO would be equipped with single slot flaps like the A320, because these look like double slotted ones, and indeed these are double slotted because I think only the LX, so the long range, so the newest version which is going to come out, will have the single slotted flaps, because there they made some improvements where they can achieve the same flat efficiency with one flat here. So basically we are talking about this flat. There is a double slotted flap here, so there is a second flap within this flap which goes down. You could have seen that in the replay. So for the normal NEOs, it's still double slotted, like with the COs, so the older engine types. But for the LR and the LXR, I think maybe only for the Elixir, so the newest one, which has actually not yet flown in real life, there they have single slotted flaps. So that's the difference, as far as I've understood from the documentation, what I've read about these changes. Okay, so we can set up our next flight. So the cockpit is already basically up, our power is on and the APU is on. So we can skip those parts, and I think our brake fan can still stay on, but now the temperature is low enough that we could already depart, so that's not going to be a problem. All the other things are still ready with the lights. We have the ADIRs available, so that saves a lot of time in a go around. So we don't have to again initialize the navigation, the inertial system, because normally that takes around 10 minutes. But it's never wasted time because it takes some time to fill in the flight plan anyway, so not a problem. But at least now we don't have to do it. So the strobe lights are on auto, navigation logo lights are on system 2 now. Seatbelt signs, we assume that all the passengers have left now, and let's say now they are starting boarding again, so we'll put the seatbelt signs on. The no smoking is still on, and the emergency exit lights are armed. The landing elevation is still set at auto. Then we put back before we turn the fuel pumps on, I will load us for the next flight, so that's something we shouldn't forget. So now Fuerteventura to Tenerife Sur, we need 4.8 tons of fuel. So that's again not much, 4.8 tons. And then let's again play around the passenger distribution a bit. Let's do now a bit more to the forward. When you have 200 passengers out of the 244 maximum with the setup, doesn't change that much if you move the passengers a bit forward, backwards, because there's not much free space to play around with. But it will give a different trim setting for the takeoff, and it's always nice if it's not exactly the same. Also the zero fuel rate, center of gravity percentage is different of course then. So we save these load settings and the refueling is done. And now we can turn on the fuel pumps again. Okay, fuel pumps are on. We don't do the, well, we can do the fire tests again. And if we want to do that very precisely, then we can also put this display up and do it like that. Okay, this is passed. This is passed. And this is passed too, so that's good. Radio management panels are already on, and we are good to go for the FMGS initialization again. So we put these two up, this goes to data, GPS, and this goes to the init page. And as usual, I put up the plan page here, zoom to 20 nautical mile radius. And that is it. And before I forget, I will turn the flight directors back on, and I will no, I don't have to do anything with that. So the flight directors are back on, and this is back to plan mode. Carriage is set already. Then we can initialize our route. So the init A page, we first set our departure is Fuerteventura, Golf Charlie Foxtrot Victor, and we are flying to Golf Charlie Lima Papa. No, we are not flying to Lima Papa, we are flying to Tango Sierra, Tenerife Sur. Tenerife Sur. So Fuerteventura to Tenerife Sur, Fuerteventura, Tenerife Sur. Our alternate route is going to be Lima Papa, Golf Charlie Lima Papa, so Gran Canaria. And now we are Iberia Express, so Iberia Express. Iberia Express 2021 into the new year. And then the position should be correct because our IRS is already aligned to 28272, 28272, and 13521, 13521. Perfect. That means our IRS is indeed still correct. And the cost index is going to be 31. And now we have a higher flight level, probably better for the winds, is flight level 270. Okay. Normally you can also check the temperature actually here if you want. So you can go to the wind page and see on the top of, so on the waypoint in between was the temperature is minus 35 degrees. you can change that. The automatic, so the minus 38 is at the standard atmosphere. That would be the temperature at the flight level 270. But we can fix that better to minus 35 degrees, and then the fuel calculations are going to be even more precise. Okay, so the init A page is done. We can go to the flight plan. And now in theory, I can go back to the fix info page and clear these fixes. So I can say clear, and then there is no, and I can also clear this one, and then that's also disappeared from the display. So that's how I cleaned up the display from the two fix info entries that I've entered for the previous leg. Okay, Fuerteventura departure, still runway 01, and we are taking the Lorpo for Quebec departure. Lorpo for Quebec departure. There is no transition. We insert the temporary flight plan and then confirm it as non-temporary anymore. And that's our only waypoint. From there we are arriving to Tenerife Sur. And for that I'm going to... Oh no, we still need the Fuerteventura charts, but not the arrival charts, but the departure charts. So let's put every chart there, what we need. Departure was the Lorpo... what's this called again? Lorpo for Quebec, Lorpo for Quebec, Lorpo for Quebec, Lorpo for Quebec. So we'll take off, fly around the arc, and then fly to southwest. That's the Lorpo for Quebec. It's going to be a nice arc, so there we'll look to the left a bit for the views over the island. And then when we arrive to Tenerife Sur airports, search, arrival Tenerife Sur, then we will arrive via the, going to be also something Lorpo, because that's from where we are arriving. I don't see, and then let's check it again. The arrival is Lorpo Van Golf. Lorpo Van Golf. Why did I not see it? Yeah, because I'm looking at La Palma. That's not gonna be useful. So then let's do Tenerife Sur. Now it's Tenerife Sur. Good. Arrival Lorpo. Was it Van Golf? Van Golf, indeed. Lorpo Van Golf. Lorpo Van Golf arrival. So that's the arrival. Actually, here you can see from Lorpo Van Golf along the south coast of the Gran Canaria. So maybe nice views there too. And then we arrive to the Tenerife Sur BOR. Okay. And then the active runway on Tenerife Sur is normally 07, because the wind is right now 040 degrees 10 knots, so that's going to be 07. Arrival 07, and that's going to be probably the ILS Zulu for the approach. ILS Zulu runway 07. Indeed, but we'll arrive like this and then fly out and fly back. Normally you would be vectored here by a Tenerife approach. Maybe I will show how to enter the hold like that and then fly the full racetrack out. We'll see. So the ILS 7 Zulu, and we will come on the Lorpo Van Golf, Lorpo Van Golf arrival, and then our via is actually Tenerife Sur. So yes, that's a bit weirdly drawn, but I think that's gonna be it. And then insert. Okay, we can skip through. Yes, so this is actually how it is. It looks different here because these are all intercepts. So here we arrive, then we intercept this outward radial, and then we intercept this inward. So when we fly it, it will look differently. But we also enter then the alternate route, which is to Tenerife Sur, to Gran Canaria. So we'll need that chart too. And the route for the deviation is full of directs. Okay, the Tenerife Sur departure is 07. There is no departure route. And then from here we just go direct, so direct Conda, and that's the nearest Conda, then Lomas, Lima Oscar Mike Alpha Sierra Lomas, Conda, then Lomas, then Lima Papa Charlie, Lima Papa Charlie, then Lima Papa Charlie, and then we need to 03, well, it's gonna be 03 left again because 03 right was always a pain. And then for that we have Gran Canaria. Let's see the available approaches. Let's do Isla Zulu 03 left. Can we do that from starting from LPC? We can do that. We just have to do a racetrack, okay. So then we do arrival 03 left Zulu, 03 left Zulu via, there is no star, but there is a via of Lima Papa Charlie. Why is that not available? Yeah. Okay, then we don't do via, but we'll fly it manually if it comes to that. So no problem there. But it's not gonna come to that in any case. So from there on we'll do, if we have to do it, then we do it manually. We'll do it properly following the procedure. The only thing to keep in mind in this case is that the altitude calculation might not be correct when it's set up like this. Oh, which OFP layout do I use in SimBrief? That's a good question. I will have to check that in SimBrief. Maybe I can still, because I'm here. Actually, SimBrief is open. And then if I go to edit flight, then I think I can do OFP layout. What I use is the Lido. So the Lima India Delta Oscar, the Lido OFP layout is what I use. Okay. And then, so this is set up. We can put down this. We can switch back to art. We can zoom into 10. We can set up our flight level was 270 if I remember correctly, because there is still no ATC, so we'll just clear ourselves to the cruise altitude, which is 270. 270. 270, good. And now here you can see that all modes are in managed mode. So flight director is on. That was one of the mistakes I've made a few days ago by not setting that, so then the autopilot of course couldn't engage properly and things got messy. But now we are doing it correctly. At least I think so. Alright. And then the next step on our checklist is, so we have filled the flight plan, we don't need a secondary flight plan, and the frequencies are fine for now. Init B page, so we go to the Init B page and put in our weights. This I will already put down on flight plan, right? Yes, it's on flight plan down, good. Then we need to enter 69.6 tons as zero fuel weight, 69.6 tons as zero fuel weight, and the center of gravity is at 28.1%. Okay, and the block fuel is 4.8. It's already using some fuel because we have the APU running already, 4.8. And we have perfect extra time, 30 minutes beyond the deviation to Gran Canaria. So that's good. And then last things on the flight plan is get the wind data again. So we'll get that automatically from the sim, and then insert the cruise wind from SimBrief. Again on the page with the winds here at the LPC, Lima Papa Charlie, at the wind is 285 degrees, 285 degrees. And 77 knots, it's quite some wind from the west, so that's going to be headwind. Okay, and then another fuel prediction. We still have enough extra time, good. That didn't change much because it's a short flight. And then we can, as last, the performance, and now we will not use toga, just to show a different setup. We use flaps 1 config, no toga. It's a flat runway, so there is no slope to set. The speeds will be 145, 145, and 149 knots. Transition altitude is 66,000, and the flap setting is 1, and the trim setting is down 0.1. So it's almost No extra trim necessary, and the flex temperature for the one flex setting is 60 degrees, so we take basically that it's 60 degrees outside, and that will set the performance of the engines for the takeoff. Okay, we have the takeoff performance page here in the display and the flight plan for the first officer. We put the Terran radar back on, and the flight directors are on. The constraints are displayed for me. I like to see that. And then we can go and basically almost start our pushback. We are on time because we said we would depart at 55. We are 5 minutes before that. So our off the block time is going to be as predicted good. Transponder code is entered. The transponder is still on but on standby. Indeed, we put it to above for the departure, so we see more planes above us. System 1 and standby and on. That's all good. The pilot side MCD displays performance takeoff, and the other side is flight plan. APU start. The APU is already started, so that's no issues. External power can go off. The APU bleed is on. Then we have power from the APU. We can tell the ground services to disconnect the low pressure air and the external power. And the APU bleed is already on, so everything is good. We can basically call the pushback truck. Before we do that, I'm going to disconnect manually the gate, because I don't like that when that only happens when we start pushing back. So I will say, let's disconnect this. Okay, then okay, we'll disconnect it when it disconnects. Sorry about that. And then we call for the pushback. We have to go to the south. The pushback is facing to the south because we'll take off runway 01. Here is more or less okay.
Ground to cockpit. Can acknowledge. Coming through the menu when you are ready.
And we are ready for the pushback, so let's call.
Ground to cockpit. Tau is driving up.
This flight's going to be shorter than the previous one because we are going closer, but we are climbing higher, so it's going to be a bit different. And of course we'll have different views at different islands. I like also flying on the Canaries because the views are always nice. And also it's helpful that there the sunset is later, so I like to fly in daylight, and now in Belgium it's already dark. So it's also positive about flying on the Canaries that you can see more. Okay, but the doors are already closed. Normally I would want to have disconnected the boarding, and we can actually do that. We put already the beacon lights on and just quickly.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed, ready to connect.
And now if I release the parking brake and put it back on, then it would already disconnect, but it doesn't matter. Okay, we can turn off the brake fan because we are cool enough, perfectly cool enough. Just check if the meteo has changed. No, there is still a 1019er for the QNH, and there is a 14 knots wind in the runway axis, almost 030 degrees, so it's a bit from the right, like a 20-degree crosswind.
Tau connected and bypass being inserted. Release parking brake.
Okay, we can release the parking brake. And then the gate goes away, of course.
Starting pushback, and you may start engines.
Then the engine mode selector goes to start, and starting engine 2. And since we are pushing back, the block timer can start. And the engine is slowly spooling up. We can also put up the parameters to see what's happening. Oops, here. And that's the view from the tower. Okay, engine 2 is almost fully available. We wait for the M1 to rise to around 19%-ish. Okay, and So engine 2 is available, starting engine 1. Yeah, Heavy Driver is asking if I have ever had better pushback violently swinging you left and right. Yes, I think everybody has that once in a while. But what happens, I think, is that when you start the pushback, then you have this left and right swinging, and then usually the pushback happens okay just when the pushback starts. There is this left and right swinging. It's a known issue with the X-plane and the Toliss planes. They say it's X-plane's fault. I think I've also experienced it with another planes. I'm not so sure about it. But it's a known issue.
Complete. Set parking brake.
And there is no solution. They say if you cycle your brakes before the pushback starts can help, but I'm not so sure about that because I usually try doing that and I'm not so sure it always happens. Okay, so they asked to set the parking brakes. Engine
Disconnecting tow. Stand by.
Engine 1 is available, so engine mode selector switch goes back to normal. And then we put the APU bleed off. And then the ground spoilers armed. The cockpit door is still closed, the rudder trim is reset. Then we set for the flight controls what's required, the down 0.1, so that's almost nothing. Down 0.1 is set, good. Flaps takeoff, so that's flap 1. Pitch trim is set. We don't need anti-ice because it's 21 degrees and the clouds are only low. And then the APU master can go
Tower is disconnected and bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the right. We'll see you next time and have a safe flight.
Okay, so we just have to wait for the hand signal and then we can start taxiing. Still nobody is near the airport, so I don't think we have to call anything. No, nobody is in the vicinity arriving or departing, so nothing to be done here. Okay, we are waiting for the hand signal. There is the hand signal and there is the pin that was removed from the front wheel, so we are free to roll. Taxi lights, runway turn off lights go on, taxi lights go on, and then we can start rolling. Okay, now that we are rolling, we do a brake check. Brakes are available. Then we can do a flight control check. Full left, full right, aft and forward, and then we can also check the rudder, and while we do that we disconnect the nose wheel steering from the rudder so we don't swing left and right. Rudder is also fully available, good. Then we set maximum brakes for takeoff. We tell the cabin to get ready for takeoff and we check the takeoff config, everything is green, climb and nav is armed, no red flags, nothing on the displays, so we are ready for takeoff. We'll taxi here to the left and then taxi out to the beginning of the runway. So left here is Lima 3, I think, gate Lima 3, indeed, and then we taxi down to Echo 10 or Echo 9, doesn't really matter. Okay, when turning with the A321 you have to let the cabin go a bit further than the line is, otherwise the main wheels would not stay on the center line, and then if you do that you can nicely turn and still be on the center line. So that's the technique here. It's a bit different for the A319 where you really basically want to just turn with the cockpit on the line. And then don't be too fast for the turns, then that's fine. You can also have a look from outside. And then you're nicely on the lines. No, Heavy Driver is saying that he has these issues after the pushback has finished. I've never had that. I've only had issues when the pushback has started. I've never had issues when the pushback has completed and then instead of disconnecting, having this weird behavior. No, I really didn't. I've never had that, so I cannot help about that. And it's strange because I also have not read about similar issues. Maybe, I don't know if you have tried going to the explain forums and comment for the thread of better pushback, if other people have encountered similar issues. Don't know, I have not seen that, sorry. It's quite a long taxi here because you have seen that the runway is quite far out where it starts. And the reason actually for that, why the runway has this strange setup here, it's very easy to understand, I think. So I'm just going to show how the runway looks like. So here you can see that the runway, the part of the runway where you can land is this. That's already quite a long section, but already you can start your takeoff run from here. So there is even more runway length available for the takeoff. Why that's very useful is because you can basically fly very far and with a very fully loaded plane, because when you take off, you always, if your plane is fully loaded and is full of fuel, then you need a longer takeoff run. But when you're landing with an almost empty plane, fuel-wise, then you're much lighter, so you don't need so much runway. But it's very nice always to have more runway for landing available, for takeoff available. So basically that's one of the reasons why they are extending the runway in Charleroi, because there was only 2,400 meters available for landing, and also for takeoff, of course. And that means that for the A340s that fly with Air Belgium there, the runway is just not long enough for a fully loaded takeoff. So they could never fly fully loaded from there to a destination in the Caribbean, for example. But now when they complete that extension in 2021, then they will be able to fly also with fully loaded planes to those far destinations. Yeah, no, I really have never seen this issue with a better pushback at the end of the pushback. I've only had the issues at the beginning when it really swings to left or right, but not at the end. Okay, we'll stop at the holding position before entering the runway, but we can take this first one to the left, the Echo 9, and then I think the other one more to the right is for bigger planes which need a less steep turning radius for the lineup. There it's easier. Okay, so before takeoff, again there is nobody still, no ATC. Let's see, last check. There is no ATC and there is no other planes here, so we don't need to call anything. So strobe lights go on, the landing lights go on, those wheel lights go to take off. Let's tell the cabin we are about to take off, and then the transponder goes to TA array, and then let's line up with the runway. And again, for the Air Belgium is still around as far as I know. They have not flown much recently, but they are still around. I have seen the planes on the Charleroi. So I don't know what's the situation now with the COVID and everything, but I think they have also been flying still in the summer. I'm not sure. I think they are still around. Okay. There is plenty of runway available. We'll be airborne very, very, very early. Okay, nicely lined up. We can also do a rolling takeoff because there is plenty of runway. So the chrono is started. I'm just gonna quickly do the sound of the engine higher, then 50% call takeoff, 50% stable, 2 clocks, that's a Manflex. The forward pressure choke, Manflex, SRS, runway and auto throttle is armed. 80 knots, so the forward pressure can go. You have to apply quite some pressure on the rudder to the left because of the wind from the right. 120 knots, 140 V1 and rotate. Okay, positive rate. And gears up. And we are 400 above, autopilot is engaged. Runway turn off lights off, nose wheel lights off. Ground spoilers disarm. And then we can already go back to level climb, so that's one click back. Ooh, there was a range. A runway LS mismatch. I don't know what that means, because we have taken off the proper runway. Maybe a frequency was not tuned. Range. I don't know what that message was, but everything seems normal and we are on the correct route and we are flying the correct departure. I will try to look that up afterwards. And I hear from Heavy Driver that you've seen that the Air Belgium A340s were leased to British Airways on the carrier route. It's possible. I really don't know. I've not been following the news. I only know about the whole situation with the Air Belgium because I know that one of the reasons for the runway extension in Charleroi was to enable heavy planes go further fully loaded. Okay, we have passed the S speed, so flaps can be cleared up. And then soon we can also set standard burrow. We are just crossing the altitude of the clouds. We are still 10 degrees outside, so there is no icing risk. Okay, since the transition altitude is 6,000 feet, we can set standard pressure. And now we are intercepting the arc here, the 12-mile DME arc. You can see that we basically started the turn 2 miles, a bit more than 2 miles before. That's necessary for a 90-degree intercept. I think easiest to calculate how far in or out you have to start your 90-degree intercept turn to radial is to divide your airspeed in knots by 200, and then you get the miles you have to initiate your turn with a normal rate turn to intercept. So if you are flying with 200 knots and you want to intercept the 12-mile DME arc, then you have to start your turn 200 divided by 2, so that's 200 divided by 100, that's 2 miles in advance. And then we have crossed the flight level 100, landing lights go off, seatbelt signs go off, and we are fully configured. There is a very nice view to the left. Okay, engine sounds are a little bit too much for now. And Hank is asking when should the extended runway be in use, and will there be new taxiways? I think they were aiming maybe summer 2021. It's definitely 2021. I don't know when exactly, but even the last time I've flown in October there, they were already asphalting some parts, I think. So they are in a quite advanced stage, and there will be a few new. So there will be on the north side. There won't be any new taxiways on the south side. But there will be some new taxiways on the north side. And because beyond Mike 6, I think there's going to be also Mike 7 connecting the apron there to the north. And of course, then they will not extend the north taxiway, I think, because that was already reaching far enough. maybe just a tiny bit, because Mach 6, after Mach 6 there will be a Mach 7 I think, so then between Mach 6 and 7 there is also a bit of extension on the November taxiway towards the east, but that's really minor. So it's mainly the runway works and then very minor works on taxiways. I don't think Air Belgium flew to Hong. I really don't know the destinations of Air Belgium well enough to say things about their history. The only reason I know about them is that I've seen their planes in Chandra, and I've heard the story that the main reason for the runway extension was to enable them to take off fully loaded. But that's all really. I don't know about their routes much. I've not really looked into this. Unfortunately, I cannot help with that subject. In any case, there is a very nice view here to the island of Fuerteventura. The airport is still under our wing down there. You can see it's beautiful terrain, beautiful scenery. I love it. It's so nice to fly in the Canaries. Always like it. Okay, so now that we are basically on our climb, we will reach our cruise altitude out there. There is no more action items that we would have to make. I think everything after takeoff was completed. Engine mode is normal. The packs are on because we have not turned them off for takeoff. We have turned the landing lights and seatbelt signs off, so passengers are free to move around. And we have zoomed out the necessary range. We'll zoom out further when we reach the cruise altitude. So that's also alright. Can we still see some of the island here? Yes, just under the engine. Okay, but since we have a bit less time this time, we can already start briefing about our approach to Tenerife Sur. So we don't need Fuerteventura anymore, we only need Tenerife Sur. And I'm also going to close the charts for Gran Canaria because I don't assume we'll have to go around. So the only missing charts are the airport charts, which we have not put on yet. And then the taxi stand charts, parking stands, good, that's there. So what are we going to do here? So we still fly to Lorpo, so that's still on our departure route. You can see here we fly to Lorpo, and then the only constraint was there to be above 7,000 feet. We are plenty above, so no issues. Then we fly direct to Gran Canaria VOR, then waypoints, and Tenerife Sur VOR. So this is very straightforward. And then here we will fly over Tenerife Sur, and then officially I admit I'm not so sure how without ATC vectors would this approach be flown, but normally you would then turn immediately left and join this racetrack out and then fly the procedure, or we could join in the hold and then start the racetrack normally, but I'm not so sure. I don't have an IELTS, an instrumental rating of course, and don't often fly here to Tenerife Sur. But what we'll do is we'll just fly over the VOR, and then as we have actually seen on the plan, we'll join this outward leg of the racetrack and then fly the inward leg of the racetrack as it is. So it's gonna be all fine. It's an ILS approach. We'll not overcomplicate it. So there is not much else to brief here. The only thing is that we should be at the VOR at flight level 70, so we can check that. What is our plan saying about being above the Tenerife Sur VOR? Tenerife Sur at flight level 93, so that's above the flight level 70, that's okay. And then the D10 from Tenerife Sur, that's where we start coming in. That should be at 4,700, 4640. I'm not sure this is all programmed in fully correctly, but we can actually I will leave it like this. I will check it later. We are just reaching our cruise altitude, so that's why there is the Alt star, and then it will switch to Alt, or cruise, it will switch to cruise mode when we are up there. Now we are intercepting the cruise altitude basically. And you can see that the engine is spooling down a bit because it doesn't need to work that hard anymore. And now we are of course switching to a cruise speed, so the engine is again spooling up because there was a different speed for cruise as for climb. And it's already asking me to enter the destination data, so before we discuss anything else, I'm going to fill that in so we don't forget that. Now we can clear this, we can go to performance, we can go to approach, and then QNH is 1020 in Tenerife. The temperature is 17 degrees, it's not so warm there, yeah, relatively speaking. And then the wind is 040 degrees and 10 knots, so there is going to be a bit of side wind from the left. What's the transition altitude for Tenerife? Is 6,000 feet. And then the minimums for class C. Wait, these are all for class D. Is it possible? Cat C. Okay. For Cat C, the minimums are 435. 435. It's a bit differently structured than usual. Okay, so the minimums are 435. And then it's all set, but we can still check if the ILS is already tuned. Not yet, we can tune that manually. It's India Tango Sierra, 109.7, 109.7, and the course is 73 and 74. That's good, within 1 degree, that's fine. And we can also put in the Tenerife Sur VOR as the Tango Foxtrot Sierra here, and then we see that distance do good. We are still 100 miles from the VOR. We'll go back to progress here also, enter Tenerife Sur 07, and then we also see the distance there. Okay, this goes back to progress, sorry. Performance, we are 56 miles out. And heavy driver is asking which upcoming Explain 11 add-ons I'm most excited for. To be honest, I don't even know if there is anything now that's still announced, and I'm looking forward to it. There is one thing, there was a scenery for Madrid Barajas announced a few months ago, and there were some preview images. I don't remember now what's the developer. But I would like that because I like flying in Spain, again a bit similar to the Canaries, and that would be nice to have Madrid Barajas airport. But otherwise there is not really much. I was looking forward to the NEO add-on for the Airbus A321, the one we are flying now, but I don't recall actually having something that's already announced, and I would be really looking forward. I'm looking forward to the point where laminar research, so the developers of Explain decide to improve the weather engine, how the clouds look, how the sky colors look, how the atmosphere feels like. So like how that looks like in FS 2020, that's really beautiful. I wish we had something similar with not too much performance trade-off, of course, So that would be nice. A bit of improvement in atmosphere and like that. That would be nice. Hank is asking if there is no ATC, do I always follow the planned flight level and so, or if I make shortcuts? I typically follow everything as planned. What could be difference is, for example, when arriving to Charleroi and there is no ATC, then I vector myself in. Because otherwise it's a really long approach path to go around the VOR and make a loop and come back. So no, then I just vector myself in. So that's also something actually we could do now with Tenerife Sur to vector ourselves in. Because actually yesterday I've seen a video of an actual landing at Tenerife Sur from the same arrival route we are flying now, and then they flew it differently. So they didn't fly over the Tenerife Sur VOR. I assume they were vectored because they were vectored further out. So if I show it on the map here, they were coming in from here, like we are coming in from, and then they were probably vectored again, but I've not listened to the ATC, and then they flew out and then they were just turned back and then they landed on the ILS. But they definitely didn't fly over the VOR. So I think they were vectored. We could do that too. And then we could actually just also ourselves do our descents and not do a selected mode, but do an open descent where we set our vertical speed, for example. So maybe we could do that. I don't know. Actually, well, we can do that, and then what we'll do is we'll just fly inwards to Tenerife Sur, and then before reaching it, we will fly outwards on this 254 track until we are 10 miles out of Tenerife Sur, and then we will intercept the 74 degree radial imports in VOR mode. So that's okay, then we can do this. It's a bit more, it's different. It's more manual work, but I like doing that actually. So we can do that. Looking now at the arrivals for Tenerife Sur, and we have a 20-minute window before anybody else arrives. So I think we should be safe. And I think vectoring yourself is perfectly fine, as long as there is nobody else in the airspace where it could be confusing. If there is no ATC and you are vectoring yourself and there is nobody else, there is no problem. But if there is frequent departures, for example, then it's better to fly the actually published arrival route without self-vectoring, because if you self-vector, it's more difficult to estimate where you will be there. And yeah, ATC can give you a VFR approach too, but I mean, I don't know how it works again exactly in real life because I don't have an IFR, an instrumental rating, but I'm pretty sure you can ask an ILS approach too if you want to fly an ILS approach. But I know that in real life, pilots are happy to fly visual approaches. So if the weather is nice, then they will ask sometimes to fly visual if it's possible. Also, I've heard from pilots saying that they are always happy to fly the VOR approach to runway 06 in the Charleroi, because of course there you have to disconnect earlier and then line up with the center line, because it's an offset approach. So that's much more much more manual flying than actually just sitting there and following the ILS or a straight in approach where nothing happens. So pilots are happy in real life to fly manually. A heavy driver says that these VFR approaches are common in the US and rarely done in Europe and Asia. Nice to know. Yeah, I know that there is a lot of differences in how everything is organized in Europe and other parts of the world, but I don't know the details of it. And we are actually above Gran Canaria, so we'll have a look out to the right, and it's pretty cloudy in Gran Canaria. But you can see also here the Orbex overlay is working nicely. There are some communication towers. There is a weather radar here on the top of the island. I know about that. I've seen pictures. But the rest is quite cloudy. Okay, but then if we do all this manually, then we have to make sure that we have Tenerife Sur VOR. We already have that, so that's VOR2. I'm not going to display a VOR1 because I only want one arrow here. And then we can also set the course for the VOR, which is 74. But then I'm going to enter this VOR to the... Oh, no, we can do that. It's 74. But I'm actually not sure. I will put that here. 74, so that's what we need to intercept. And then outward track is going to be 254. And we will still try to hold to these altitudes. Okay, so the ILS is already programmed, right? So the ILS was... Where is it? Ah, yeah, we are here. The ILS was 109.7, 109.7, the course is 73, that's correct. And then the VOR is the Tenerife Sur 116.4, Tenerife Sur 1164, but I'm going to just also hard tune that so it's not tuned away in any circumstance. Tenerife Sur 1164, and then the course we want is 7474. And then here, if you go to, oops, we have to start our descent, so I'm already going to do that. Down to flight level 70. Okay. And we are just on profile, and then we will switch from the... So now we are still in managed mode, so the flight computer flies the pre-calculated profile. And we will switch over from managed to manual when we are somewhere out here above the ocean. Okay, where were we? Where were we? We are still looking outside, if you can see something nice. Most of Gran Canaria is under the clouds, so not much. Okay, so we are on the descent, auto brake is set to low. Our performance is already set, destination data is entered. And then we can follow the progress of our descent. That's all good for now. And what I wanted to show is, now we have the VOR mode, and that's basically works like a normal VOR instrument in any plane. This is the course we will want to intercept, so that points to 74 in this direction. And then this is the deviation needle, which will come here when we intercept. So the trick is that when we are somewhere out here, and then we will fly the 254 track until we cross the 10-mile radius away from the Tenerife Sur VOR, and then we'll make a turn right and intercept the VOR. And then there are different heights we have to descend to. I will quickly have a look again if there is anybody else in our way. No, there is nobody else. There is nobody down on Tenerife Sur on the airport, and there is no arrival within 20 minutes of us. So not really much that we would need to call for. So we can go back to map view and see there is gonna be a slowdown there to 250 knots. I can already see that. That's probably where we cross flight level 100. And yes, you can choose between the CFM LEAP and the Pratt and Whitney engines in the NEO extension. So in this livery, we have the LEAP, I think. So yes, this is the LEAP engine. And there are other liveries with the Pratt and Whitney, but you can actually choose. So here you could select the engine type. I have it on auto because there is an engine livery configurator file which sets the matching engine for the livery. So of course the creator of the livery needs to paint that engine for that to be available, and not just a blank livery, not a blank engine texture. But indeed you can choose, so all engines are available, and you can configure your liveries to automatically select the correct engine type. So I also have for the NEO a Lufthansa livery, which is with a Pratt & Whitney, because Lufthansa uses that engine. And then when I load that livery in, it's automatically choosing the CFM, that one is out. So that's automatically choosing the Pratt & Whitney engines instead of the LEAPs that are with the Iberia Express. Oh, it's difficult. explain this. But yes, all engines are available and you can select them properly and nicely. We can actually now see correctly that it would fly the approach well, even without our manual intervention. But we'll intervene manually so I can show some manual flying and to kind of show what would happen if we were vectored, let's say. So I will do the outward leg manually. We will not fly over Tenerife, but when we are somewhere here, we'll already make our turn to the left, the outward track of 254, and then turn back in. And then maybe we switch back to... No, I think we'll do fully manually till we intercept the ILS. Talking of the ILS, we can also put the ILS scales in so we see that. And now we are on the descent. So normally you would also put the TRA to look more for aircraft below you, but there is no traffic, so there is no issues anyway. Okay, so we have to descend to flight level 70. We can descend till 4,700 feet to make the turn. So I can already clear ourselves to 4,700 feet. Since we are not going to fly above the VOR, we assume that we were cleared there by ATC. And then to have the DME 10 mark also visually, we can quickly still put a fix there. So flight plan, not here, not here, here. Say fix info, and the VOR is called the Tenerife, so Tango Foxtrot Sierra, Tenerife, and then we want a 10-mile radius circle there. Perfect. And that shows where we can turn. So actually if you zoom in, then you can see very soon that the waypoints that are in the flight computer are placed where that turn would be. So even the computer would fly it perfectly fine manually. We are slowing down now to 250. We are going to help that a bit with full speed brakes. And then soon we will switch over to track and flight path angle mode. And then fly the track outward. So track flight path angle mode means that we don't set our heading, but we set our track we want to follow. So no matter what the crosswind is, the airplane will fly the correct track. The heading might be different to correct for the crosswinds, but we will fly the correct track. It's easier to see in nav mode because we want to turn to 254 when those waypoints are so see it is 2425. Now that's at a track of 260. Now we don't need the speed brakes anymore, and now we will manually go to 254, and you see that we basically made our turn in time because the pre-calculated track would also run there. Now we are a bit more inwards the pre-calculated track, but since we will slow down a bit more, it's gonna be fine. Okay, so now we are basically flying this outward leg of the racetrack, and we can already go down to 4,700. I'm going to zoom out a bit, and we will want to arrive to that altitude in time. And normally you should also see that where you arrive. Yes, here. So we want to arrive there earlier. Oh my, this descent rate was not what we needed, so full speed brakes. I don't think the calculation by the computer was fully correct, because otherwise this is a quite steep descent. Of course, you are fine to arrive to the 4,700 by this waypoint, so we can go a bit less steep, like this, and then it's easier. because then from when we turn back, then we can descend to 2600. Okay. But let's aim also at a lower speed now. Let's aim at the green dot speed, so the lowest speed where we can be without putting the flaps out. So now we are aiming at the green dot speed. But the DME arc here is just a horizontal distance. So it's just the distance from the DME on the horizontal plane. So there is no difference here at the heights. So that doesn't play a role here. So this arc at 10 miles is the horizontal 10 mile from the DME. Okay, so we should be arriving to 4700 normally in time. I think we are good, our speed is okay. And then we will intercept the radial of 074, and for that we'll simply go to VOR, and then we'll make the intercept using the VOR instrument. So we'll do like a 30-degree intercept or a 45-degree intercept. Normally it's going to be fine, and we can start the turn when we are at 10 miles. So when we are 10 miles from the VOR, then we'll start the turn to intercept the VOR. Okay, so 10 miles, then we start the turn, and 30 degrees, around 30, yeah? And we can also put the local pressure 1020. We are a bit fast, so put out some speed brakes again. And then keep an eye on the needle. If it starts coming close, then we have to continue the turn, otherwise we can stay a bit 30-degree offset. Okay, we are arriving to 4700, so our altitude is good. And the needle started moving, so I'm just going to turn this to 74. I assume that we will make the intercept just as we arrive in the turn, otherwise we'll still fine-tune that. Okay, we don't need the speed brakes anymore. I can hear it on the engines, they are working. You can see nicely we are intercepting the VOR. We'll make the turn almost exactly. I think it's gonna be exactly fine. And then we can continue our descent to 2600 feet. Okay, 2600 feet. And then we go with a flight path angle of 2. Okay, so you see we have nicely intercepted the VOR. The needle is, there is no deviation. I'm going to go back to nav mode so we can see more and zoom in. And now you can see that's where we have to be at 2600. And at 230 knots or less. We are already at 230 knots or less, so that's fine. I'm not sure why I don't see. Okay, there is the blue sign. We have to go down a bit faster. This is good. A bit of extra drag, not much, just a bit of extra drag. And now you can already see the ILS marks are also there, so we are perfectly fine. And then when we are at 4.3 from Tenerife Sur, then we can go down to 2100. Okay, and I'm already visual with the runway. We're a bit off to the left, to the right, but this is good. When we intercept the ILS, that's gonna be fine. So when we are 4.3, then we can go down to 2100. 4.3, continue to 2100. And the blue arrow is there.
2,500.
That's good. We don't have to go too steep. Let's go a bit more to the left because we are clearly a bit off the ILS. And then at 2100 we go back to manage speed, we start putting out flaps. The approach phase is already activated. I'm going to turn back to arc mode, zoom into fully, speed brakes can go back. Okay, we are at 2100. I'm going to set approach autopilot 1 and 2 so that we'll capture the ILS, and in the meantime we are configuring for landing. Okay, we are safe speed, so flap 2. Localizer captured, glide slope is captured, almost captured. Glide slope is when the white around disappears is captured, good. Gears down. It helps slowing down. It's quite late configuring. Laps 3 and then laps full. We are okay, gears are down. Speed brakes are armed. Oops, landing lights were not on, so landing lights on and nose wheel lights are on. And that's... oh, seatbelt signs were also forgotten. I was talking too much. We call the cabin and then we are going to land. We are fully ready for landing. Configured, gears are down, flaps are out, no messages.
1000.
And there is slight crosswind from the left. Okay, we will wait till the engine stabilizes with a fully configured state. Okay, manual flight directors go off. Road data, we again didn't set the go around altitude, but that's okay.
500.
Then line up nicely with the center line. Keep the profile. There is wind from the left.
400.
A bit high. Ooh, it's not just a bit high.
300. 200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. Retard. 10. 5.
Alright. Reversers. Hundred knots. 80 knots reverse idle. 6 knots manual brake. And we can already exit here. And just quickly turn left and then we'll clean up and do our after landing checklists. Okay, after landing, then spoilers, flaps, landing lights go off, nose wheel lights taxi, strobe lights auto, APU switch, APU master on, then start the APU, and I think the transponder goes to standby, and I think that's all. Just a quick look at my checklist. Landing lights are often retracted, nose wheel is taxi, strobe auto, boilers disarmed, engine mode selector was already normal, Darren can go off. Transponder is on standby, flaps are retracted, APO is on, APO start switch is pressed, brake temperature are going to be monitored, and it's already high, so we turn on the brake fan, and then we can taxi to our parking position. Yeah, this was a good landing, I'm happy it worked out well. And I'm happy that Hank also enjoyed the explanations. I always try to talk while flying, otherwise it would be boring just looking at the screen. And also there was a bit of manual flying, manual, not completely in managed mode, but we flew a track flight path angle and then started the ILS like that. Also the configuring was good. So we simulated slightly how it would be if we would have been vectored. Of course, then they would have also given us different altitude clearances. We have followed the clearances in the approach chart. So it was a mix from between the two words, being vectored or just following the approach. And now we just taxi to a nice gate, and then we'll be done, except for, of course, we'll look at the replay of this landing too. And welcome to Tenerife. Tenerife Sur, the temperature is 17 degrees, there is some clouds, but it's perfect holiday weather to enjoy virtually, as we have enjoyed our holidays this year, unfortunately. We'll just find the gate facing the Tenerife Sur sign, not going too far. Of course, again we didn't set the go around altitude, but that was the only mistake, I think. Okay, so we can just take gate 2, stand 2. Looks okay. It's called Foxtrot 2 here. Okay. And slow down a bit. And let's turn. Oops, that was a bit early turn. I have to go a bit further before aligning. Okay, now just straighten out. And then slowly, bit of braking pressure. And stop, parking brake on. APU bleed on. And then anti-ice is already off, there was no anti-ice. We can switch off engines. Engine 1, engine 2. Okay, and runway turn off lights, taxi lights go off, beacon lights go off, engines have stopped. It's basically stopped. And then we can tell the passengers that we are here and they can get the bags and get out. The elapsed time counter is stopped again. This was a 55-minute block time flight. We have not started our chrono, but the flight time was 40 minutes. Fuel pumps can be turned off. We can also connect ground services, and then external power can go on, and the APU bleed can then go off, and the APU master can go off. Fuel pumps are off. Display normally. Now you would dim all the displays. We are not going to do that because I still want to show the replay. And the brake fan is already on. So we are down in Tenerife, and that's how it is here. I'm happy that people who were here enjoyed the stream. There were quite some questions and I could interact with you guys. It's always nicer like that. I hope I will see you the next time too. After a few minutes down on the ground here, I'm going to still show the replay. And Kenchi also, welcome to the stream. It was a nice evening. You can always watch it back after the stream and see what we discussed about. But you are just in time for the replay of the landing. That's what you just wanted to see, of course. We are down in Tenerife South, and I've already embarked the people. Of course, I also celebrate New Year's Eve, but only with my partner at home, the two of us and our cat. But we have ordered nice food, which is waiting for us. We will just have dinner after this stream is done. And that's going to be it. It's going to be the end of this very interesting year. The year when I started flying in real life, and then a year where I had to stop flying for 3 months because of the lockdowns. But at least we are healthy and we don't have issues at home either. But I hope next year I can restart with sharing videos of my actual flight training instead of these online flights. But until then, it's a nice feeling in between the real flights. Okay, I think it's time enough to disconnect from the network, and then we can have a look at the replay. Okay, we are a bit far out, so I will fasten things a bit. Difficult to get to the exact moment of the replay when you are streaming 2 flights, then the scale is not so precise anymore. Alright, we can see Tenerife South here. There is the main highway running here between the volcanic hills. Of course, full of holiday homes and hotels on the beach. Some banana plantations in these greenhouses. Golf course. I think this was the nicest landing of the last 4 flights. Very nice in the center line. Good landing rate. Cannot complain. Okay, let's do one more from inside, from the passenger view.
Five, 30, 40.
Nice and smooth. And with that, I wish everybody a happy or happier new year. I hope 2021 will be the year where we get back to normal and get back to real flying too. But until then, enjoy simming, and I hope to see you on the next stream. And enjoy tonight with your small bubble and have some bubbles. So see you the next time. Bye bye.